All right. So once again, I would like to warmly welcome all of you to this session as we are continue to celebrate International Coaching Week. Today, we are joining in a live discussion, and my colleague Leah from Ignite team is in the session. So if you need any assistance during the conversation, please feel free to reach out to her. Also, as you know that we will be offering an ICF CCE unit for this session. So also Leah will be sharing the link before we end this session. So stay tuned. All right. So as all of you are continue to joining in, I invite you to introduce yourself in the chat room. Let us know whom you are, your name, where you are joining in, and also your specialty. And if you would like, your interest in joining in this conversation. All right. With that, let's begin our presentation. Once again, officially welcome to Ignite Global. We are celebrating International Coaching Week with you. So as the creators of the world's first ever coach education specialization encompassing child, adolescent development and parenting, we are honored and grateful to be able to contribute to the evolution of coaching profession and science. So if you're wondering who I am, my name is Lux Hettiyadura and I am your host today. I'm a parenting and child development specialist and also the creator of the world's first ever ICF accredited coach education specialization encompassing child, adolescent development and parenting. All right. Okay. So as we are diving into this conversation, let's proceed with our presentation for today. So today we are addressing a topic that is close to my heart, and I know that this is a topic embraced by many of you, especially those who are interested in coaching, bringing coaching into child development, parenting, and educational system. So some of you joined me joined the session yesterday, and this is a continuation of a session from yesterday. And if you were not able to participate, so as we are diving into our topic, the coaching approach to whole child, I would like to begin this conversation with a question. What is whole child approach, especially when we look at it from a coaching lens? Now, when we look at whole child coaching perspective or child development perspective altogether, I think it begins with our understanding, awareness that every child is whole and complete, even a tiny little newborn. Now think of a little acorn, as you see in this slide. Tiny little acorn waiting to become a magnificent oak tree. It carries the blueprint within to become that beautiful tree. And every child is like that. So coaching being a reflective, developmental oriented and growth focused practice, as professionals, it's important that we step into this realm with the understanding, with this mindset that every child carries the inherent potential that they are meant to be in this world. And that's where the whole child approach begin with. So with that, allow me to make a little change here. All right. So now that we are looking at whole child perspective and also understanding that every child is born with inherent potential, Now, when I say this, don't get me wrong, professionals, there could be developmental challenges, um, developmental needs that needs to be addressed. At the same time, we are still looking at the child as whole, knowing that we are able to provide and accommodate those developmental needs. But in order to do that, we truly need to understand what is holistic child development means. So I would like to look at, when we look at the hidden depths of child development, I'd like to compare it with or use the iceberg analogy here. So let's look at the tip of the iceberg, what we usually often see, right? So we see a lot of academic performance being highlighted when we look at child development. We expect children to be compliant and obedient. When we look at the development of a child, child rearing, discipline, we pay attention to these aspects. We also look at their behavioral management. We often see that they're problematic behavior, and then we try to manage those behaviors. I hear from many parents that I work with, not just as a parenting and child development specialist and a coach, but also earlier in my early career days as an educator. I hear a lot of behavioral management, that there are a lot of problematic behavior in children that we need to fix. We also focus on physical development of children, their height, their weight, their diet, their exercise, all of that, which is also important. And then we also pay attention to the extracurricular activities, their achievements, just like academic achievements. If you see today's world, especially the modern child development, there is a lot of extracurricular activities going on, right? One after the other. Sometimes it's almost like children don't have any more time to take rest, even that there are a lot of pressure. They have to keep up with them in order to get certain grades and have certain marks, grades in their reports and all those expectations. And then we also look at their basic emotional regulations. We expect our children, adolescents to manage their emotions, if you notice, right? We expect them to know what to do when they're experiencing intense emotions. And then we also we pay a lot of attention to their social skills, like their good behavior, their manners. Are they sharing? Are they respecting adults? Are they um, considerate human beings, right? We pay attention to these areas when we look at child development on the surface level. Now, all of these are crucial aspects, right? Now, let's look at what lies beneath, what we usually don't see, the underlying influences of everything that we see on top of the tip of the iceberg. What we usually don't see is that there is more depth to emotional and social intelligence of a child's development. Emotional safety and psychological well-being comes to play, which often doesn't receive the attention that it deserves. And then developmental milestone and gaps. If you ask parents in general, how aware are they about their child's developmental milestone? You will be surprised. Most parents don't know about their children's milestones. And so they are not able to identify when there are gaps in those milestones. I'm not just talking about the first 2 years of child. It's the early years, of course, it's the most important stage, but also in adolescent years, we have adolescent transition periods. They have milestones. So if you're not aware of that, it's going to be problematic. And then a child is not just something that exists in isolation. We will look into this, into the discussion in depth. We look into family dynamics and home environment. And then a child's sense of purpose and meaning. Very often we look at a child as a little adult, a small adult, or a mini version of us. Yes, it is true that we pass our genes to the child, that it's common that we see our child as a mini version of us. But it doesn't mean just because we created this child that they belong to me, that I own them. They have their own sense of self, sense of purpose and meaning in this, on this earth, in this life. Why are they here? Like, even if we just go a bit deeper into like extensional questions, like why are we here, right? We all have a purpose. At least some of us reflect on those things. So a child is someone who is in the process of becoming an adult with their own purpose and own meaning in life. So, and then influencing their identity development and sense of self, exactly what we are discussing here, right? They also develop their own identity, a separate human being. Although I create this human being inside my body, if I'm the mother, still it's a different identity altogether, right? And then attachment and relational patterns. I see most parents, most professionals, we caught up so much in doing actions. We pay so little attention to the relationship, the attachment, the connection between the child and the parent. A huge area that's been neglected in child development. So this is an important area that usually doesn't we don't see on the surface. And then when we look at the child's body, it's not just, the arms and legs and a body. There is also a nervous system, which means that nervous system regulation and sometimes even trauma responses. I'm not going to go too deep into it because it's a whole topic together, but we will address into that in a little while. Cognitive and executive functioning, which is we are looking at the brain development of the child and the brain functions. Hidden stresses and coping mechanisms, right? Sometimes children grow up in high stressful situations, not to forget that they are also going through physical, emotional, psychological changes. So they have certain stress that we are not aware of. So they may develop certain coping mechanisms that we are not aware of. Right. So these are some of the developmental aspects that we see on the surface level, and then things that we don't see often. So now let's bring our attention to the next slide, where we will be looking into frequent parental concerns and regarding child and adolescent development. I see someone is raising the hand. Unfortunately, I'm not able to interact live here or take any questions, given that we have to maximize the time. At the same time, if you have any questions, please feel free to leave it in the chat box, and I will get to it when the time permits. Thank you for your understanding. All right. So now as we are proceeding with the presentation, let's look at the frequent parental concerns regarding children and adolescents. So now please know, coaches, educators, and professionals, also parents, as we are looking at some of these concerns, that everything that we discuss here, we look at these situations with deep empathy, especially if you are present here as a professional coach, especially adhering to ICF framework. You know the importance of empathy. Empathy is one of our core principles in coaching competency, right? Coaching presence, we look at competency number 5, coaching presence, and then coaching competency 4, cultivating trust and safety. So we look at empathy. So I invite you to embody that empathy, curiosity, and compassion as we are looking into some of these examples and case studies. We are not coming here with criticism, or judgment. And these are common struggles that parents truly face. So they may have their reasons why they face these challenges, right? So you may hear parents constantly complain about that how their children don't ever listen to them, and it's a true concern. And they may say they are very disrespectful. They talk back constantly, especially in adolescent years. If you have an adolescent or if you work with them, this might be a common complaint among the parents that you work with. And then they may say they are always glued to their phone and don't engage with the family, especially in the new digital world, right? It's all in the phone, it's all in the computer, some device, some screen always, and they refuse to take responsibility for anything. Again, this is something I hear, especially during the adolescent years. Parents complain about this. And then why can't they clean up after themselves? Now, seemingly these are little things, but imagine having all of these at the same time every day, constantly. That's going to be problematic. And that's what parents are talking about. So it's not just, don't look at these situations, these complaints in isolation, one at a time. Look at them all at the same time present in a household. Why? Sometimes in a house, there are more than one child and they are in different developmental stages. So, based on the child's developmental needs, these concerns can be escalated, right? So, imagine these concerns to be magnitude in a house. And then they are so lazy, unmotivated, especially when it comes to academic performance, or it can be cleaning their room, as simple as that. And they are always making excuses instead of doing what they are supposed to do. You may hear these concerns. They expect everything to be handed to them. I hear this often with new generation parents. They say, we did not have these things so easy back in our day. We had to do it ourselves. And we had parents who were not even aware of these things. So we had it really hard. And these children have it so easy and they are ungrateful. And these kind of things I hear very often from parents. Now, as we are looking at some of these examples, I'm going to now show you another example. Let's look at it as a case study. Again, coaches, please be respectful as you are looking at this example. Be empathetic, be compassionate. Also, please have in mind that you're only looking at a screenshot. We are not hearing their emotional responses. We are not seeing the person, facial expressions, their energy, their sound, their language. We don't know. We are just looking at a text which can only communicate very basic information on a very surface level. So take it as face value, take it as resonate. And as you are looking at this case study, please know that, of course, it's kept as anonymous for privacy purpose, and also this is shared for our educational purpose only. So this is something that I took this screenshot as I was preparing a lesson for our CADP coach specialization for our students. As curiosity, we are exploring curiosity. So I took this as an example for one of their e-learning activities, and I thought I will bring that same here for us to look at some of the struggles, real struggles parents have. Now, this parent is so helpless, and she or he posted this on a social media platform asking for support. Now, of course, you can imagine there are 120 comments here, 25 reactions, and out of this 120 comments, there were a lot of criticism, judgments, all of that, right? Let's put those aside. And as you, a professional, intentional professional looking at this, I invite you to look at what are some red flags here. What are some expectations placed on the child, the developmental stages? What does it say about the ecosystem of the family? What this might be saying of the family dynamics of the child's environment. And the mother's emotional regulation. Or mother or father, I don't know who this person is, whoever this is, on the surface level, right? Again, we understand that everything that we said earlier. So just take it as face value. So what are your observations? I see some observations coming in. The mother seems overwhelmed. Yeah, raising 3 kids alone. She's overwhelmed. Yeah, absolutely. So most of you are identifying that um, the mom seems overloaded, um, and so on. Yeah, yeah. You can very clearly see that the frustration. Um, that's right, Dylan, right? Overwhelmed, I think. Exactly. Sounds like she's blaming the child, and it can happen, right? I mean, imagine sometimes when I see this, I imagine myself in these situations, like some of those examples we see, all of them present at the same time with 3 children. And if this person is raising these children alone, imagine, let's add to it, while doing maybe 2 jobs, imagine what might they be going through. That's right. I see Valerie has a interesting curiosity. I wonder what else the child is doing beside these behaviors, right? That's right, Carrie. She's overwhelmed, expecting more than is reasonable for a child. Isn't that right? I agree, right? So, of course, as you know, that we are only be able to make a face value, uh, not even an analyst. I mean, we are not even beginning to analyze here. It's impossible to analyze a situation like that here on the surface level, but we are just making certain observations, and we can see that for a 4-year-old, if we especially look at the developmental stages um, of a child who is still in their pre-operational, if we look at the cognitive developmental stages, the child is a 4-year-old little boy, right? Just 4 years old of life experience. They are what? Tall as a chair, right? So it's a very small individual with very little life experience we are looking at, and also a very the brain is still in a very early stage of development. So if we look at cognitive developmental stage of this child, they are in their pre-operational stage, right? They are still very egocentric. That means they are unable to understand a perspective from their own. They are still in the stage of they are not able to make any logical sense. They are not able to emotionally regulate themselves. So they need a lot of caregiving. And it seems like all of you said, the mother is very overwhelmed, and there are a lot of expectations on the child. So you see, these are some of the real challenges that parents face. Um, that's right, Manjula. Very high expectations, right? And so we are seeing the expectations. Now, what we don't see is, why is the mother is so overwhelmed? Why is she expecting all of these things, right? This is what we don't see. Now, moving on, I would like to bring your attention to something promising at this point. Now, I know we are talking about a lot of limitations, unawareness, and all of that. At the same time, coaches, I am truly happy and grateful. I know that we are still taking baby steps, but the world is truly, in my opinion, is heading towards the positive direction, because at the same time, there is a lot of chaos going in the world. It's normal that we highlight the chaos in the world, but we also need to know that there are leaders that takes uh, initiatives in things that truly matter. So, for example, we are looking at the Shaping Us campaign. Um, this is a campaign that is quite strong. At the same time, it's not very popular among the society because again we focus on more or less what's not happening and what they are not doing, but these are initiatives that's actually taking um, place, although they are not out in the media. So now looking at this, do you know that the Shaping Us campaign, if you don't know about this, please do your homework a little and find out what is possible. I think at the moment this is on hold, but it's an ongoing campaign. So Shaping Us campaign, led by the Princess of Wales, was launched as the Royal Foundation for Centre for Early Childhood released new data on public understanding of child development, which shows around 1 in 3, 36 adults reporting just a little or nothing about how children develop in their early childhood. Now, I know I'm just sharing some statistics and numbers, but you know that they are not just numbers. These includes real people, including us, some of us, parents, educators, anyone interacting with children. For example, nannies. Now, I live in Thailand and I see that many parents, because most parents have both the mom and dad both work, so they need both parents work, so they need to work, they need to hire a nanny. So now, how about these house staff that takes care of children? How aware are they of child development, especially during that formative years of a child, which impact influence their brain development directly, which is going to be their hardwiring. It's more concerning, more alarming than we think, coaches. So you see, because we are unaware of how children develop, parents, like what we saw on that screenshot, have concerns, which is in fact basic parenting education. For example, if you ask me, cognitive developmental stages of a child and the abilities and capacities, ability levels of a child, these are this is basic information, basic education every parent should possess before they become a parent, right? So I have worked with children, adolescents, parents, families around the world, coming from different backgrounds, traditions, social brackets, everything, coaches. And I have seen children carrying invisible baggages that we have no clue of, right? So, for example, if we look at some of these struggles, they carry a lot of unrealistic expectations at home. They are expected to be someone, something. They are compared to this or that every single day. And in school, they are expected to perform this, perform that. They are expected all the time. It's like almost the child is able to walk and talk. They are given these expectations. Now you are a, B, C, D. There is a to-do list, and now your job is to fulfill this to-do list. Here is your agreement. Good to go. Let's go. It's almost like that. I know that I'm exaggerating and being dramatic here a little bit, but this also is a reality for some children, unfortunately. And then we look at neglect and unhealthy family environments. We do not see this very often because, again, when we look at neglect, it's not something that happens. It's something that doesn't happen. So we don't even know that certain needs are neglected because they were never met. So how do we know something that we didn't know existed, right? So some of us are born into unhealthy family environments, so we don't know that this is toxic and we believe it to be the normal, right? This is why people who grew up in abusive family households often choose abusive partners that beat them up or abuse in some way because that's what they are used to. So they continue to repeat that. And then performance pressure. Now, would you agree with me, professionals, parents, that our children live in a world that are completely different to the world we grew up in? We did not have this social media pressure, this AI pressure, all of that. But right now, for children, adolescents, the world that they live in, they have to constantly perform something, either at home or school, or especially on social media. They are being compared to someone or something constantly. It's unconscious. It's woven into our day-to-day life now, especially with social media. We are constantly, including how much did I run today? How many steps did I walk today, to all our big goals and achievements? We compare ourselves. We have this pressure to perform, to post something on social media that I have a better life than. We are not looking at it from a lack perspective that, oh, people are trying to show off. Of course, we love to share good moments with the world. At the same time, it gets to a point that it's unhealthy. So, for children and adolescents who are still in the developmental stage, who are not able to identify the reality of what is real and what is social media, they are constantly under performance pressure. We look at peer interactions. We also know the interactions that we look at during our generations is compared to now, it's different, right? We did have peer interactions and pressure, but now, just talking about social media, imagine the peer pressure and also coaches. It's not a very compassionate world be, among their peers either. It's very competitive. It's not truly what we think it is. Some of these pressure that come from peers, it can even be sometimes harmful. And we are looking at certain situations like, for example, bullying. And bullying now can be not just, out and about being beaten up. It can be subtle. It can be emotional bullying. Very subtle jokes, slight jokes. But still, bullying is bullying. Labels. I see. This is something I hear very often when we look at child development, children, and especially in adolescent years. I feel it breaks my heart sometimes when I see the number of labels children come with: attention seeking, lazy, unproductive, disrespectful, not good for anything. So many labels. And we know that these labels stick for the rest of our life. And some of us are still carrying some of the labels that we received in childhood. If we look at some of the things that we carry ourselves, that some of these labels that we have given ourselves, oh, I'm so lazy, oh, I'm this, I'm that, they did not show up yesterday. So if you have some of those labels that you give yourself, I invite you to ask yourself, who gave you that label first? How did you receive that label first? Right? You'll be surprised. Misunderstanding, especially I see this in adolescent years because of the gap and the generational gap. We need to grow up with them if we are not up to date with them. There was recently, I was having a conversation with a teenager. He's 15 years old, and he told me, man, you need to grow up. You need to update. You don't know what's happening now. And I was like, yep, you're right. I think I need to explore more. I need to learn more about what's going on with your generation, right? So misunderstandings, common than we think. They are mental health coaches. It is a huge concern. This, I would say, mental health concerns in children and adolescents is truly like the pink elephant. It's right here. It's right here. And as much as we think we pay attention, we do not pay enough attention to it. Mental health issues, especially in adolescence, especially after COVID-19. And also children, adolescents, especially in their adolescent years and preteen years, as they are hitting puberty, gender. confusion, sexuality concerns. Sometimes they are not sure of their own gender. They are born in a body, they feel otherwise. They are they are told, according to their religious traditional beliefs, that they are told that they need to like a certain gender, but they may be like the same gender. They may be homosexual. So what about that? And they might be going through this and feel intimidated or scared to talk to the parents about it. We don't know what kind of concerns that they are silently battling with. So when we say, oh, they never want to talk to us, or they always slam the door, they have these big attitudes, they are not, it's not personal to you, it's not personal to anyone. They are dealing with their own struggles that they think we don't understand. Have you ever told a teenager that I understand you? They will laugh at you, right? Because in their mind, they think we don't understand them. Adults don't understand them. I discussed this yesterday also. Because from their perspective, although they are in their formal operational stage or even their concrete operational stages in terms of cognitive development stages, they are still egocentric to somewhat. So they believe that their opinion is the opinion, and that others don't receive what they are feeling the same way, because they still struggle to understand other people's perspective, still in the developmental process, right? So now, as we are looking at some of these concerns, coaches and professionals, educators, I want to bring your attention to something crucial. As individuals interact with children, adolescents, parents, especially family systems, we must be aware of this information that I'm sharing with you. So if you're not aware of it, please do your study and educate yourself. It's absolutely crucial. So Center for Disease Control and Prevention in USA conducted an eye-opening research on adverse childhood experiences, how they influence the quality of adult life. And it was quite perspective changing. The research data, it changed the how we look at mental health altogether. So they categorized these adversities, and also they categorized into 10 main um, adversities: abuse, neglect, and household challenges. So under abuse, physical abuse, emotional and sexual abuse. Neglect is often physical and emotional neglect, and then household challenges to be parent mental illness, household member being substance use or parental separation or imprisonment or domestic violence. Now, earlier when I said, when we think about trauma, we often think it's something drastic, dramatic that happened to us. Yes, it is trauma. It's a type of trauma, but often developmental trauma is subtle and it occurs at home by our parents, our caregivers, our educators, our immediate environment, and we are exposed to these subtle trauma, subtle adversities every single day on a regular basis. So this is why sometimes we have dysfunctions in our adulthood and we don't know where the cause of it, because they are buried in our childhood. For example, if we look at relationship patterns, there are some of us, we know that there are certain relationship patterns. Some of us, when we are in relationships, we are extremely anxious. We are anxious, we are clingy, we are needy, we message our partner like 10 times if we didn't hear from them that we can't. Like, have you seen individuals when they are not in a relationship, they can't function properly? That they are very codependent on a relationship. They being alone is like an imprisonment for them. And they are very anxiously attached to their partner. And then have you seen partners or relationship candidates to say, um, they avoid relationships. They avoid um, close, intimate relationships with people. Now, where there can be many reasons. When we look at it from trauma perspective, there are individuals who um, are unable to develop that deep intimacy with someone, so they prefer superficial relationships, casual romantic relationships into commitments. And these kind of individuals can also manifest in like, for example, third party situations in relationships, like cheating, right? Things that like that can manifest, and so on. So these are just or you may have seen individuals who choose partners who are constantly unavailable. Either they are married, they are taken, they are emotionally unavailable, physically unavailable, they either work long hours, they just have no time, they are unavailable. We wonder, why am I constantly choosing a partner who is not available to me? What am I doing in this relationship? This person is constantly letting me down. Why am I here? Why am I not walking away? We have some of these problems, or let's say procrastination, chronic procrastination. I know that is so important, but I will wait for the last minute because I would rather do it with that sense of anxiety that I'm going to die if I don't do it. Two, I will take my time and I will do it, or I would rather keep procrastinating until I never do it. These are just common problems that I'm talking about when it's chronic, problematic to the point that we need external support. Now, if you look at these situations that I'm talking about, they did not appear, knock on the door just last night, right? They Something happened along the line, and we don't even know where the problem is. And most of us are trying to, like, if we look at our addictions, right? Some of our dysfunctions in our life that we keep ignoring. When I say addictions, I'm not talking about abusing drugs. Addictions can be addicted to people, to relationships, addicted to food, addicted to watching TV, addicted to exercise. I worked with a client recently, addicted to exercising, addicted to maintain a certain professional image, addicted to awards, addicted to education programs after program after program. Have you seen individuals like that? So in many different formats, these dysfunctions show up. And what we do, we try to address the surface level problem, band-aid solutions. But when we only open it and see what's inside, we go back in. Very often it goes down to the childhood. Why? Because just because we don't remember our childhood doesn't mean things didn't happen. That's why it's important, coaches. So when we look at ACEs data, over 60% of adults worldwide report experiencing at least one ACE. 16% have encountered four or more. Nearly two-thirds, 63.9% of US adults have experienced at least one. About 17%, 3% report four or more. And emotional abuse is the most commonly reported, is 34% zero, followed by parental separation or divorce, 28% four, and household substance abuse, 26.5%. Now, when we look at parental developmental abuse and trauma, it's not always beating the child, emotionally neglecting them, so on. Even constantly comparing a child, having those high expectations, trying to fulfill those needs through our children, also considered as adversities, coaches, because they create certain complications in our psychological development. So, as we are looking at the pieces of the puzzles. Right now, I want to share little story from the practical perspective. Now, how this goes on and on and on and on forever from generation to another. Now, those who joined me yesterday, you already know this story, but let me share it again for those who are completely new to these sessions and to this content. So, this is a story that I learned from the internet. It's a simple, but I think it makes a lot of sense from the context that we are looking at this discussion today. So there was a little girl and she saw her mom cooking a fish. And then she went to the mom and said, Mommy, why are you cooking the fish and you cut the head and the tail of the fish? I like the head most. Why did you do that? So the mom said, Oh, darling, I don't know. I learned this recipe from your grandma. This is how she cooks it. Why don't you go ask her why she cook it this way? So the little girl went to the grandma, asked the question, and the grandma said, This is how I learned it from your great grandma. And this is how she always did it. And I think it tastes better like this. So you go on, ask great grandma. And then, so the little girl just did that. And the great grandma said, she smiled and she gave a hug to the girl and she said, Oh, honey, it's because back in my day, I had a very small pan and I was not able to fit the entire fish in. So I had to get rid of the head and the tail. And I also couldn't afford a bigger pan back then. So just like that, 3 generations repeated the same pattern in this scenario. It's the fish. But let's turn the fish into the real life, right? Sometimes we pass these patterns from one generation to another. We continue to repeat it just because no one stopped to ask why. Why am I passing this belief, this way of parenting to my child? Just because I was beaten and I was raised in this strict, rigid parenting dynamic, do I have to do the same with my child? Is that the only way to parent a child? Are there not any other ways to do this? Now, don't forget that we receive a lot of wisdom and wealth of goodness from our generations in how we raise children. But this doesn't mean that everything is constructive or relevant to today's world. We are addressing children in 2025. It's a modern world, especially with AI and social media and everything after COVID overnight, right? So we know that we are raising children in a different world. So stopping and asking the intentions behind why we are doing purpose. This is why coaches purposeful parenting, intentional parenting in rather than autopilot parenting. So now, when we look at it from a professional perspective, you know that parenting is a full-time job, 24/7, whether we are happy, sad, in good health, or having a divorce, or the world is falling apart. Once a parent, always a parent. Excuse me. And we have no breaks. There is no way that we can take a break from parenting, right? So now when we look at it from professional perspective, parenting as a job. Now, would you agree a brain surgeon or a pilot, a very high risk, high responsibility professions, right? Both of them. Why? Because once the surgeon open someone's brain, they don't go thinking and processing how I'm going to figure this out. They know exactly what they need to do, how to hold that knife, what they are doing. A pilot is exactly the same. Because why? A life or hundreds of lives depend on those moves, hands, decisions that they make. That's why these are high responsible, high risk taking professions. Now, parenting is not any different than that. Why? Because as parents, as caregivers, we have the access to that child's moldable brain that we can shape. We intentionally or unintentionally, we anyway shape that brain. So our interactions, how we interact with that child matters, right? So having that understanding is important, coaches. So now, as we are exploring all of these at this point, let's look at what is whole child approach again. So now when we look at whole child perspective, we said earlier, we first of all look at a child as a whole and complete individual, even a tiny little newborn, right? So when we look at the development, we understand there are developmental aspects, especially when we look at it from the whole child perspective. There is brain development, there is cognitive development, there is emotional and social development. There are so many different aspects. I'm only focusing on um, key aspects here today for this discussion. So we are looking at 4 different developmental aspects. So let's look at a situation, right? A case study. So we are looking at the hot cognition in adolescents. This is the scenario. So a parent would say, I don't know what to do with my child. Let's call him Max anymore. He's 15 years old and his moods are all over the place. Yesterday, he got so angry over a simple request to turn off the game and to do his homework. He started yelling through the controller and slammed the door. I tried to talk to him calmly, but he just kept shouting that I don't understand. Remember, we said earlier, I don't understand him and that I'm ruining his life. He was so reactive and impulsive. It was like he wasn't even thinking. I feel like I'm walking on eggshells around him and I'm exhausted. How do I get through to him without setting him off? This is a real client situation, coaches. One of the times parents told me. Now, this is a situation I hear from parents commonly, often, especially in parents with adolescents, right? So you may hear that they say, you don't understand me, you are ruining my life, I hate you. Lots of those kind of language being used, and you can imagine these kind of situations. Now, we are looking at this as a case study, but imagine something like this keeps on happening every single day again, right? We also know that there are more than one child sometimes. So these kind of situations can change the house, the family climate, the family culture, right? So it can bring additional stress to a family system. So as we are looking at that, now let's look at it from the developmental perspective as we are looking at aspects. So there is something called hot cognition, right? So those who are in developmental space and learn about the brain and these aspects, so you might be even familiar with this. This is a very simple concept. So I'm bringing it here that even as simple concept as this, how coaching can even elaborate the benefits in situation like that. So when we look at adolescent brain, we understand that it is still in the process of growing, especially prefrontal cortex, right? The connection between the limbic system and prefrontal cortex are still in the process of growing. And especially when we look at their frontal cortex, is still in the it's still in construction. So this means their executive functioning skills, which are crucial life skills, are still in construction, which is like logical thinking, reasoning, planning, organizing, all of those, as I said, important life skills. So because they are still in the process of developing them, this means they are not able to fully demonstrate them, to be able to fully use those skills or regulate those skills just yet. So let's say in previous situation with Max, we saw that he's having a go, reacting, he's impulsive, angry, expressing intense emotions, and so on. So when we look at it from the brain development, we are looking at hot cognition. This means this happens when they operate with reaction, emotional reaction, right? Remember, we said their connection between the limbic system and the prefrontal cortex is still under construction. So this means they are not able to fully emotionally regulate when they logically make sense of something. So this means they are not fully able to balance their emotions and logic when they make decisions, when they plan. This is why they can be impulsive. They engage in risk-taking activities. They push boundaries. All of these impulsive. This is why this is really hot cognition when they operate from that emotional reactivity, impulsivity, without any rationale behind what they do, right? And you see that this is a common situation in adolescence. Now, here is the good thing. It's not only hot cognition. If there is hot, there should be cold. Thankfully, there is cold cognition, of course. So you understand that obvious difference is that it's the opposite of hot cognition. Cold cognition is when we are able to regulate ourselves, we are deliberate, we are logical, we are emotional, but we are less influenced by emotions. We are not reacting to our emotions. So this means that now the child is, or the individual is back to a regulated state, right? So this means that when to cultivate this, when we cultivate this allows them to pause, breathe in, observe their body, come back from the mind to body, because when hot cognition happens, we are disconnected from the body, we are operating from the mind, right? So this is why also one of the cognitive distortions we observe in adolescents is emotional reasoning, because they are not able to logically make sense of their emotions. They tend to react from emotions. But when it's cold cognition, we are able to bring them to a place of reflecting about consequences and reasons behind their choices, and how to regulate emotionally charged situations. So this is what it means to transform from hot cognition to cold cognition. So now our question here is how coaching can help adolescent, for example, looking at the whole child perspective, make a transition from a simple situation as like this, for example, right? So when we look at this transition, coaching enables, now look at the coaching competencies, right? Coaching enables emotional regulation techniques. So when a child is in a hot cognition state, if we take a coaching approach, not immediately jumping in to solve the problems, truly coaching approach, right? Emotional regulation techniques, empathy building. Coaching is a practice that is completely 101% driven by empathy, right? So empathy building, reflective questions. We know that coaching communication is based on reflective questions. So when we ask them, instead of judging them and telling them what to do, when we help get them to a place of reflections, when they are able to, the calm down their hyperaroused emotions to a state. So we allow them some time before we approach this. First, we provide emotional regulation techniques, right? And then perspective shifting, consequences, decision making frameworks, action planning, strategy. This is what coaching does. Identifying triggers. So, okay, I am having a go. You told me this. I told you this. Now we are having this fight. So, what is the trigger? Why are you upset? What is making you upset? Let's look at that. Let's fix that so that next time we know what's upsetting you. Excellent. And then future pacing. This is also what we do when we goal setting, right? So how do we approach next? So let's say with an adolescent in this aspect, so I experience quick temper. Now this could be a goal. Now how am I going to regulate that moving forward from here so that I can have better family dynamics with my parents and my siblings, right? So looking at whole child perspective, you see, we are looking at just one behavior, but this is what happens instead of looking at that behavior as the problem. When we take a step back, zoom out, look at this entire picture, we see complete different sides to the situation. Now, when we look at what we need to know in terms of working, for example, adolescents, first we need to know what is adolescence. What are their physical changes? What are their cognitive changes? How does the adolescent brain develop? What are the mental characteristics develops over the course of adolescence? What are the emotional challenges of adolescence? How does the self-esteem develop? So I'm not going to repeat all of them, but as you can see, there are many questions for professionals and parents if we are truly is interested in embodying that whole child approach. It's not, you see, coaches, if you thought that whole child is some framework that we can put the two together and present it as this model, it's not. At least the whole child perspective that we are looking at as um the creator of this program specialization. Now, when we did that, we conducted a study over 4 years, which is still ongoing. Over the last years that I have been conducting this study with my team, and the more on how coaching principles can uh, enhance parenting and child development, what we really see is it's not something that we can put into one fit approach, cookie cutter approach. It's not. Every family is unique, every child development is unique. So, this is why our understanding of all these and more about the development of the child is important. Now, all this time we have been discussing about the development of the child. Now we know a child doesn't exist in isolation. A child is a unit, uh, a, a unit of a much bigger system, right? So, Alia, great question. Do we consider culture and religion? That's exactly where we are going to come to, Alia. So thank you for that question as a preparation to what we are going to discuss. So now when we look at the child development, we understand a tree doesn't exist without its root system. A child and a family is exactly like that, coaches. This is the best analogy that we can use here. Now, what do I mean by that? Have you heard they say in African culture, it takes a village to raise a child. Now, which is true, this has deeper meaning to what they say when they refer to the village. They refer to the system, the largest systems that we don't see. This is what they really refer to when they said it takes a village to raise a child. What you are looking at is the ecology of parenting, influenced by Yuri Bronfenbrenner's ecological systems theory. We study this theory in depth in our CADP level 1 program, because without understanding this, there is no CADP coaching, coaches. The reason is that every child's development is influenced by these invisible 5 layers that play a huge role. For example, we are looking at the microsystem, which is the immediate environment of the child, which includes the child's temperament, the child's personality, developmental stages, mental health, um, learning styles, intelligent types, everything. And then the parenting style, attachment style, parental mental wellness, all of that, immediate family members, extended family members, peers, educators. So the immediate environment of a child. And then the second layer is the mesosystem, which is the interaction between the immediate environment units. For example, how do the two parents engage with each other? Are they fighting constantly, or do they have a stable, great co parenting dynamics in the family? And how about the parents and the educators interact, right? How much do parents involve in their child's activities, school curricular activities, right? So this is something. And then we look at the ecosystem, which is the invisible layer that plays an indirect role in the child's development, like the community, mass media, for example, social media these days. And another example would be the parents' workspace stress. For example, if the parent is under constant stress at work and they don't have enough time to spend with the child, Now, that looks like the parent is having a problem at work, but actually, that is influencing the development of the child directly. Why? Because of the parental stress work, the parent's interaction with the child, the quality, the time spent is limited. So, we are looking at attachment issues here. And then we look at the macro system, which is the culture, the religion. This is what you asked, Alia, I think. Socioeconomic systems, for example, the based on the country that you live in, there is a religion, there is culture, there are traditions. How are they impacting the influence of the child development? For example, if you are working with parents who migrate, expat parents, they live in a culture where the religion, cultural values, everything is different. How is that going to impact the development of the child? And then the last system, which is the chrono system, which the changes that occur over time, like a death or a birth of a family member, divorce, a migration, something like that. Now, when we go back in time just 5 years, COVID-19 impacted entire system, all 5 layers of this model overnight. Overnight, everything changed. So you see, we are looking at a new approach to child development that occurred during COVID overnight altogether. So you see, coaches, this is the difference. Yesterday also I mentioned in the session that when we look at the distinguishes between typical coaching framework and child development framework, with typical coaching, individual coaching framework, we are doing life coaching. At the same time, when we work with minors, parents, and families, we are doing developmental work. Life coaching focus on coaching the adult brain. When it comes to CADP specialization, we are working with the developing brain, which is crucial to remember that our interaction has a lasting impact to their adulthood. So developmental coaching and life coaching are two different things. And of course, this is why the approach is different as well. And so to add to these coaches, the third layer is we look at the developmental aspect of the child, look at the family ecosystem, then we are looking at the parental development. The reason is most parents did not receive parenting education or skill development when they became parents. So when we look at, as ICF professionals, embodiment of coaching mindset, right? We are looking at the coaching competency. What we know is that embodiment of coaching mindset is not just the coach embodying that. It's also role modeling to our clients, to the parents, so that they also embody the same mindset and cultivate that culture. And how we can do that on top of coaching, they also need parenting education and skill development. So the parenting coach as a specialist, our role is different to a typical general coach. So if we look at the ICF competencies, I'm not going to go through all of them. This is basic information that's available to you. So please do your own study. And as you can see that this is the best coaching framework that is celebrated in the world today, as ICF being the gold standard. At the same time, you see that even these competencies still lack the potential to truly coach that whole child perspective that we are looking at. Because why? These competencies develop for adult brain. And this is, I'm not going to go through the common challenges because it's going to take up a lot of time, but these are some of the challenges that's faced by our mentees that I work with. For example, they say goal setting process is different, relationship building is different, some of those things. So I'm not going to describe this slide here, coaches, because in yesterday's session, I went through each these points. So I invite you to go back to that recording later at later point and have that understanding, right? So this is why when we look at CADP specialized coaching framework, we are looking at 5 layers. One being it being child-centric, because there is no child development coaching without child-centric. So in our program, specialization, we integrate one of the best methodologies, education methodologies in the world, Montessori education, which is a child-centric approach. And we bring in some of those principles to this specialization. Of course, it's rooted in ICF framework, focus on child-parent connection. Most of us focus on doing rather the connection. We look at developmental stages and also family systems. So when we look at CADP specialization competency, we are looking at important theories like attachment theory, cognitive development theory, psychosocial development theory, and ecological systems theory. These are only just 4 theories that I present to you today. There are other theories that we look into. At the same time, in the specialization, we are not learning the theory, because we can do a PhD on each of these theories if we want to. But the point is bringing the necessary aspects that is relevant to whole child coaching from each of these developmental theories that highly regarded in developmental psychology. Because why? Like we said earlier, when we look at whole child coaching, we are looking at developmental coaching. So without developmental psychology integration, there is no developmental coaching. So this is the presentation that I prepared for all of us today. So thank you for being here and participating in this discussion, and also engaging in the chat box as you can. Leah, may I ask for your assistance in sharing the link now for CCEU? Thank you, Leah. All right, coaches, we now have the link for CCEU. If you would like to claim your certificate, please feel free to go ahead and register. And all right, so thank you very much for participating. Once again, I'm honored and grateful to have all of you joining us. If you have any insights, any comments that you would like to share, I would like to hear from some of you. Okay, so in that case, I would like to hear from you in the chat box if you feel up to it, if you gain any insights, any perspective that changed today's conversation. I would love to hear from you in the chat box if you feel up for it. If not, that's okay. And then I would say goodbye to you at this point and look forward to seeing you again soon. Stay tuned for more discussions like that. And I wish you a wonderful celebrations. Happy International Coaching Week, and wish you all the best. Bye for now.
Goodbye.